Scream 6 is finally in theaters, and you know what that means. We can dive deep into some big, juicy spoilers. In this video, I'm going to be giving you my spoiler-filled review of Scream 6, and we will discuss who is behind the Ghostface mask. I'm no longer going to waste any more of your time. We're going to dive straight into the video. No foreplay, no lubrication. We're not even going to spit on it. Who is Ghostface in Scream 6? Who is behind that seductive Ghostface voice? It is in fact Detective Bailey, his daughter Quinn, and his son Ethan. First time in the history of the Scream franchise, we have more than 2 killers. We have a Ghostface threesome, everybody. Actually, that's really disgusting because they're all family. I have greatly misspoken. Please forgive me. Unless this weird family is into that. I really don't know. Maybe I should just stop talking. Now, the motive for them being the Ghostface killers is good old-fashioned revenge. The Ghostface killers are, in fact, related to Richie Curse, the previous Ghostface killer in Scream 5. They are all trying to kill Sam and blame all the murders on her, being that she is the daughter of Billy Loomis, trying to convince the world that being a serial killer definitely runs in the family. They definitely copied the Scream 2 motive, good old-fashioned revenge. I really wish someone would have said, Richie's father, Richie's family.
Billy's mother.
That would have made the movie a 10 out of 10 for me if one of the characters shouted that out. Now, this is a motive that I'm very conflicted about. It does make sense in the grand scheme of the story. Revenge is definitely a classic motive, but for a movie with Scream 6, this movie is so different from the introduction, from the pacing, from the kills. Everything about Scream 6 is so different from all the other movies in this franchise. For them to kind of revert back to the Scooby-Doo formula that they've been doing for 6 movies, I was disappointed by that because this movie's so unique until the last 20 minutes. The introduction is awesome. I love it. We get a Ghostface killer killing another Ghostface killer because they don't like what they're doing. They're getting in the way of their plans. I think it's awesome. There's a lot of callbacks to Friday the 13th, Jason Takes Manhattan. Jason's character, played by Tony Revolori, kills Samara Weaving's character, which is in fact his teacher in college. I think that's super unique. It's really bloody. It sets the tone for the movie, and it's so different and it's awesome. It's probably one of my favorites, most suspenseful Ghostface and Scream openings that there is. I think it's awesome. And as far as the story progressing forward, we get a Ghostface that is just so violent. I mean, Detective Bailey makes a really awesome Ghostface. I'm assuming he's doing most of the killings in this movie. He is a trained assassin who gets shit done. He pushes the issue. I mean, he is just relentless throughout this whole film. And harping back to the killer reveals, within the first 10 or 15 minutes, Quinn says a line in the movie regarding that her brother dies, and it's a very kind of odd comment that made me clue into her being the Ghostface killer. I think the problem with Radio Silence, the production team who makes these Scream movies now, they're not very subtle in the way they reveal who the Ghostface killer is. I don't think they were very subtle with Scream 5. Richie, he would say some very sus things to Sam, and he would act a little bit weird. And I think that's the problem with 5 and 6 with me, is that the killer reveals are very predictable in a sense. They're not subtle. I feel like Wes Craven, he did such a great job at just making selective shots, kind of cluing you in on who might be Ghostface. I think, for example, in Scream 2, Cotton Weary, there's like a shot of his boots, and it kind of makes you think, oh, is Cotton Weary Ghostface? And I think Wes Craven did a really great job of kind of showing you and giving you little hints on who could be Ghostface. But with Radio Silence, with Scream 5 and 6, it's like the Ghostface killers just say some shit that is just too obvious. It's like, okay, you're obviously Ghostface. Why would you say those certain lines and phrases? It's just, that's the one thing I do kind of miss. I think Wes Craven was just perfect at just being very subtle and just dropping little Easter eggs about, oh yeah, this person is Ghostface, but are they Ghostface? It's just the whole mystery aspect I felt like was done well, done so well in the first trilogy of the Scream movies. Even though those might be some negatives, there's so many great positives with Scream 6. I mean, the whole ladder sequence is phenomenal. I mean, the way Anika just splatters on the ground is just so crazy. It's just like there's so many peaks and valleys with regard to the pacing of this movie. Like, there'll be super suspenseful chase scenes, and then you have little sweet character moments like with Chad and Tara, which is such a great dynamic between them. They're exploring the more of a romantic relationship with them, and they're kind of becoming the new Dewey and Gale, and I really like that. I mean, they handle that so well. I thought the writing overall was pretty good. I mean, there's some kind of cheesy dialogue between certain characters, and there is some exposition that is just kind of annoying, like regarding Kirby. Like, Kirby will kind of come into the scene and they kind of give you a layout of who that character is. And I understand you need exposition to kind of lay things out for people who maybe aren't in the know about the Scream franchise. I get that. But there's some parts where it's like, I'm Kirby Reed and I've been a survivor since 4. And it gets kind of corny and kind of shouty and preachy sometimes. But as well, I think adding on to a negative, there's a lot of characters with just crazy plot armor. I mean, for instance, Minnie gets stabbed very brutally inside the subway. Chad gets stabbed like 1,000 times. And now I don't really, this is more of a mixed aspect than a negative for me, because I feel like this has been going on in the Scream franchise forever. Characters get pretty much mutilated and left for dead, but yet come back. Dewey is probably the most famous example of that, especially in Scream 1. I think I've seen a lot of people kind of harp on that, but that's what Scream is. That's nothing new to this franchise. Characters survive weird, wacky ways. I think in some instances in the story, you have to suspend your disbelief sometimes. Not everything is just super concrete. And with Scream 6, I think the perfect way to describe it is that it's kind of a fun thrill ride. And if you start thinking about certain things, it would just kind of unravel the whole plot for you and ruin the movie. This is a definition of a fast food movie. A movie you can just like easily digest, easily eat, and then move on. This is such a fun package that I don't think has been delivered in the Scream franchise, possibly since Scream 2. This is a fun movie that you can lay back and watch and just kind of put on in the background and watch Ghostface fuck people up, man. I mean, what more can you really ask for? We're 6 movies deep and they kind of know what this franchise is. It is kind of like the Fast and the Furious in a way where it's just kind of, it's kind of now wacky and just kind of zany and super fast paced. And I like the direction that they're going into. I just wish for a movie that was just so unique that it just ended in a way that I just didn't want it to. I didn't want it to be that same formula. I wish Ghostface would have gotten away. Imagine if Detective Bailey was this like super corrupt cop, and that he can influence the franchise in such a new way that we haven't seen before. Maybe he lives on into Scream 7 or Scream 8, and we have this kind of Thanos Infinity War moment where Ghostface wins, and like we might know who Ghostface is, and maybe the main characters don't, or maybe Ghostface can just kind of linger on in a way that we haven't seen before. And I was disappointed because this movie was so different until the last 20 minutes. And I think a lot of people feel the same way as me, is that this movie is just, it's great until it's not. I just wish they were doing so well. They were throwing different spices and different seasonings in there. And then, like I said, man, that final act was just so, very, very puzzling. I think if they had one of these main characters die off, that would have probably maybe upped the stakes and then upped my rating a little bit. I kind of wish Gale died in Scream 6. She has a really great chase scene, by the way, inside of her New York apartment. She's such a badass, and I love the way that they handled Sydney's absence in this movie. It wouldn't really make sense for Sydney to be in this movie. Like, what would draw her back into this film? I think it makes sense in 5 because, spoiler alert, Dewey dies in Scream 5, so it made sense for her to go back to Woodsboro. I guess the only way to bring her into this movie were if you were to kill Gale, but I feel like it would ruin the pacing just having Nev back into this movie, just to revenge the death of Gale. I just don't think it would have worked out very well. And I think they handled it very well with Sydney. I think if they do bring her back for 7, I'm very curious how they're going to bring her back. maybe Gale and Sydney team up again, but then I feel like that would feel more like how Scream 5 ended. I'm just very confused on the direction that they might go with her character. Maybe they leave her out completely, which is something that might be hard to swallow and think about, because when you think about Scream, I think about Sidney Prescott. I think she's one of the best final girls of all time, if not the best final girl of all time. So as far as moving this story along further, I think they kind of written themselves in a weird way, because we're still in this Scooby-Doo formula of the killer reveals. And I felt like if you would have had Ghostface win and linger on, it would have raised so many questions and you could have went into so many different directions. I just don't know where they're going to go with 7. If they do the same thing again, I'm just going to be kind of like just worn out by it, to be honest with you. I think some people really like it for that. And like I said before, it's kind of like the Fast and the Furious. They know the formula, but it's just like at some point the formula just gets kind of stale. And I hope they do something with 7, or maybe we even possibly get 8, to where we just change it up, man. Like, I think they did enough for it to change up in 6, but not enough to keep me invested in the storyline moving forward. But I still really do like this movie. I'm just super perplexed about where they go from here, because I don't want them to do another Scream formula movie. I really want them to change it up. I think Radio Silence has a great mind and a great strategy regarding the kills, regarding character developments, and writing dialogue, and writing good quips, and making really great chase sequences. But man, they need to just do something to put a unique stamp on this new quote-unquote trilogy if we do get one. I think there's so many different directions that they could go into, and I'm very excited to see where they go. Hopefully they change it up even more, because I think this was a great leap forward for them. With Scream 5, it was essentially a requel of Scream 1. It really was. And then I feel like with this, it was kind of a requel of Scream 2, but they did change a little bit up. But I hope with 7, they just do something super balls to the wall and wild. And I'm very anxious to see what they come up with. I think there's just so many great things with this franchise. This is the most consistent franchise in the history of horror movies. I stand by that. But I think the thing that makes it so consistent is that they stick to that formula. The thing I think with a lot of people talk about with for instance, the Child's Play franchise or the Halloween franchise, the reason why those aren't the most consistent franchises in horror is because they go so many different wacky and weird directions. And I kind of want Scream to go in those wacky and weird directions. I know that might be something very hard for people to digest because we're so used to this Scream layout. But I think that could definitely benefit this franchise greatly. As far as utilizing the New York setting, I think they did a great job. I think within the budget of this movie, I don't know exactly the number, but they did really well. I think some people were complaining about, they didn't utilize New York as well as it should have. But I mean, what are you going to have Ghostface do? Fight on the Chrysler Building? Fight on the Empire State Building? I mean, I guess he could do that, but the budget would be like $100 million, and I don't think it's necessary. I think it's a Scream movie that's set in New York, and that's definitely very refreshing compared to Woodsboro, compared to Ohio, where they shot Scream 2 in. They shot it in a college setting. I think they did very well. The subway scene is awesome. The alley scenes are creepy and gritty. I really enjoyed the atmosphere of this movie. It's different from like Scream 1, where there's beautiful landscape shots of California, and you feel it feels like it's shot in the woods, and there's like no one surrounding you. You're kind of in the middle of nowhere. But compared to this, that's the complete opposite compared to Scream 1, to where there's hundreds and thousands and millions of people around you, but it seems like some people either they don't care, or they're kind of in for themselves, or like you're walking around New York and that's just kind of an everyday occurrence. You see some weird people in a mask doing some weird, creepy shit. maybe that happens in New York every day. I don't know. But I really like the way they utilized New York. It felt like a living, breathing city. that just happens to have Ghostface in it. The Scream franchise is alive and well. I think this is just such a great, unique entry to the franchise. It does have its problems, but I thoroughly enjoyed Scream 6. I think it's one of the best sequels that there is. It might even be like top 3, maybe top 2 for me. I don't know. I will have to keep on watching it to kind of make that decision. But what did you guys think of Scream 6? Did it do enough for you? Was it different? What did you like? What didn't you like? Let me know down in that comment section down below. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts. With all that being said, I will see you beautiful people in the next video. Peace.